Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to answer a fascinating musical question. What is a classical music beginner? Or maybe more appropriately, who is a classical music beginner? And this talk is for both the silent majority and those beginners who are out there, and the people who are the regulars here and the hardcore. I'm talking about this topic because, I've been posting these lists, these essential symphonies or string quartets for beginners, 10 of them. And there are only 10, and I limit that. Really, the limited number is there for a reason, not to do too much too soon, because I think that overkill is a real danger here. But at the same time, I want these lists to be useful. What is it that these lists do? What purpose do they serve? Here's the deal, and this is aimed more at the hardcore at this moment, because I have asked, as I've been posting these lists, for people not to add comments that say, well, this shouldn't be on the list, this should be on the list, or I'd rather have this list, or, oh, I thought of a list, here's my list. No, that's not the point. Here's the reality, all you hardcore people. The work that is going to push the button, have the magic bullet that's going to get somebody really excited or into classical music is personal. It's personal to every individual listener. We have no idea what that is. None whatsoever. If I select some of the more popular works, it's because they're more popular. In other words, there may be a slightly greater chance that they'll get the job done, but we don't know. We don't know. The principal value of these lists is purely informational. It's not the music per se. It's the identity of the composers, the identity of the works, the vocabulary used to describe them, the description of the different forms of classical music. They're a roadmap, a useful roadmap. And so to that extent, whether I have a Beethoven sonata or a Schubert sonata in the talk on sonatas makes no difference. What matters is that we have a sonata, that you know what a sonata is. That matters. And what matters is that you know who some of the major players are. Not all of them, just enough to get into it and know what people are talking about and have these names become familiar. Whether or not that music is going to strike you as marvelous and fabulous, I can't know. I don't know in advance, and neither does anyone else. So if somebody makes a suggestion that says, well, I would have put this on the list instead of that, it's nonsense, because it just doesn't make any difference. None of us know what work is going to strike us and really help us get into it. That's one idea. And with that, that for all of you like hardcore people, please internalize that. Because I'm tired of deleting all of these comments where you're suggesting changes to the list, as if that list means something other than something which is informationally useful. The music is going to take care of itself. The list is there so that you will learn names and works and the vocabulary of classical music. So you have a roadmap, a guide to what these kinds of things are when you see them. That's what the list is for. Now, as far as the music goes, and now we're talking to beginners, I really believe that, in my own personal experience, that there is no way to determine what piece of music any individual is going to really love or how to get started. Sometimes, people listen to classical music because they heard it on television commercials, or it sounds like film music, so they like orchestral music, or they want to hear things like that. Sometimes they actually have some minimal musical training, where they've heard discussion of specific older classical music, and they're curious about it. They may have certain predilections for vocal music or some other kind of music, some type of instrumental music. Everyone has their own personal taste. And so the reason I believe that you, the beginner, are here is because A, you love music, and B, you're curious about what this stuff is, and C, and most importantly, you have the time. You have the time to listen and explore. It's important enough to you that you're willing to do that. by watching the videos, by listening to the music that I suggest on those videos that are on the lists. And so, you wouldn't be here otherwise. And I respect that enormously. I really do. But that also means you hardcore people, I don't ever want to hear anyone say, well, this kind of music is more appropriate for beginners. Every piece of music is appropriate for beginners. The appropriate work is the one that the beginner likes, whatever that happens to be. And no one has any right to tell anyone else this is good for a beginner and that's bad for a beginner. You can say these are good works. These are typical of their form, but the fact that someone's a beginner doesn't matter. Beginners are just as capable of understanding the most complicated piece of music as the most seasoned professionals. They really are, because there is not a single piece of music ever written for public performance that does not give the beginner all the information they need to enjoy it, if that's what they're inclined to do. I really believe that. I think the idea that certain pieces are more appropriate than others because they're simpler or something like that, I think that's insulting. I really think that's insulting. I think that beginners, you're not stupid. You know what you like. And the idea here is just to suggest how to find what you like and then turn you loose to find more of what you like. Because then you'll know what it's called, and you'll know what it is, and you'll be able to describe it in a sensible way, and that will allow you to find the music that you like. But there is no magic list of beginner's music. There is no kind of music that's especially suitable for beginners. I always loved music of the Second Viennese School since I was like yay high. Yeah, okay, it was atonal, but I saw Planet of the Apes. It had an atonal film score. It didn't bother me. Classical hardcore people are alarmed at modernity. They're afraid of modernity. They're afraid of things that are long or intricate. But that may just be what your musical physiognomy is set up to enjoy. I don't know. And I want to give you the opportunity to do that. And these lists are going to have many more opportunities to do that. And, when I did the opera list, for example, I left out a lot of the very, very traditional operas. And some people took umbrage at that. There were a lot of contemporary operas. And because I find those to be, contemporary, written for today's listeners, today's ears, with a relationship between words and music that is more characteristic of what we're used to hearing today. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm not. But that was that particular path, and I have a feeling that it probably will work out very well. And the fact that I omitted, for example, Mozart's operas, which are fabulous, for some other time or another discussion, it doesn't mean that I've botched the opportunity to introduce somebody to opera. Not a bit. Not a bit. We don't know what will really turn somebody on to an opera. I do know what will turn a lot of people off to an opera, and that's sitting around for 3 hours listening to some sopranos screech away in a foreign language with lots of dry or secco recitative between very long arias where you have no idea what's going on. That could be a real turnoff. So I just avoided it in this particular case. But I could be totally wrong. It could be that kind of music that actually gets somebody really into opera. I'm sure that has often happened. I'm sure it has. But that doesn't mean I need any help in putting the list together. And it doesn't mean that beginners would have any difficulty whatsoever listening to 20th century opera as opposed to 18th century opera. It just sort of stands to reason that people who are born today should really react well to music of today, at least music of today that's written to be palatable to an audience. There is quite a bit of music today that's written to be as offensive as possible to an audience, and so we don't have to deal with it. But you get the picture, right? You understand what I'm saying. Beginners are just people who don't know something. They're not people who need help listening to something. That's a very profound difference, isn't it? I can give information, but you, the beginner, have all the tools you need if you have the time and the open mind to simply sit and listen. The music does the job itself. I don't have to sell the music. I need to provide information. So you who are not beginners, that's what these lists are. They're not an opportunity to try and come up with some theoretical ideal mean, particularly not based on what you think the intellectual level of the average beginner might be. I mean, they don't need your help when it comes to that. Trust me, I know that's true. I've been around too long not to have learned at least that. So I hope that answers the question. I hope that says something about what the purpose of these lists is, and it will, help you direct, if you're a regular, your comments to productive discussion of the works on the list, rather than to trying to provide alternatives and other things on the list, or your own experiences of getting into that particular kind of music. There are many wonderful things we can say that I think would be very productive and interesting for beginners, because they provide useful information, as opposed to telling somebody what piece of music is appropriate for them. No, don't do that. That's wrong. That's bad. It's foolish. Anyway, so there it is, my friends. Keep on listening. Let's go back to these essential lists and let's help beginners begin. Take care.